I'm back on. Hello, nice to see you on this lovely evening in Enschede. A very warm welcome. Would last people take a seat in the Wilming Theatre for the very first edition of Technology on Stage. And, well, thank you so much. Also, a very warm welcome to everyone watching at home via tubantia.nl, I think UTTV, and the YouTube channel of the Dutch Innovation Days. Very welcome to you as well. I'm Jitse Rede. I'm host of this evening, and I'm going to be talking to some amazing guests. And tonight we want to really put a spotlight on the tech, the things we don't think about anymore, the way we work, the way we study. I think we spend an hour, like 3 hours average on our phone. And I notice it when I talk to my children, that they don't even think that it's very nice for them so they can just have a handheld device and talk to their granddad in Spain. And they can't imagine that it was ever anything else. But of course, we know it was. And we don't think about it, but someone thought about it long and hard before we could actually hold it in our hands. And these are the magic minds that we really want to spotlight tonight. So, without further ado, let's go to our first guest. And his life, his bio reads like a movie script. He was a boat captain, a dive instructor. He had a pet store once. He was a linguist, a cook. And that was all before he thought, you know what I want to do with my life? I want to be a special effects expert. So then he became that, and not just a regular special effects expert, but of the blockbusters. And then he thought, oh, maybe I could join Robot Wars, but just not regularly. No, he made the most killer robot with just a frying pan and a lawnmower motor, I believe. We're going to talk about this. But what we know and love him most from is probably his work on a little show called Mythbusters. Yeah. Well, thank you. For 14 years, he and his co-host Adam Savage took us to new boundaries. They make the impossible possible, and vice versa. And we're going to talk about all of this because tonight he's here. Yeah. For people who don't know this yet, he's an honorary doctor for the University of Twente for his amazing work he did. He is here, Mr. Cool, Jamie Heineman. Take a bow, take a bow. Wow. Yeah, it takes some time. Okay. Thank you.
I didn't think this place was going to be full. It looks pretty full. What happened to social distancing? Are we? I hope you guys are all okay.
Yeah, let's not go into that debate yet. Have a seat. But thank you so much for being here for everyone. And it took 4 hours to sell out this room. And I think it's 5 years ago that you stopped shooting Mythbusters?
Something like that, around 5 years. And since then, I've been doing all sorts of interesting stuff. I was glad the show ended. You know, I had fun at times, but I never sought to be in front of the camera. I did it to make money.
Well, you have to somehow, yeah.
Yeah, you know, I'm happy that all the children learned, you know, science and engineering because of, you know, they saw that it could be fun, and I think you know, there's probably nothing better that I could imagine that I could do that would be good for the world and so on, is having lots of young people that are interested in using their minds. But at any rate, I did my thing, and I'm quite happy now. I live in Northern California, not far from where we were shooting the show, and I've still actually got the shop, and I use it regularly, but I do whatever I want instead of whatever somebody else wants.
Yeah.
It's great.
But can you, is there something you miss about those 14 years of your life?
Let me think about it. No.
Okay. And you also talked about you don't want to talk about the best explosion and the best myth you busted.
Yeah, superlatives. Superlatives.
Yeah, I didn't want to mention that word, but since you said it, thank you. But is there something? What do you think is the legacy of this show?
Well, first off, it's first and foremost, it's young people, as I mentioned, learning sciences and engineering, hopefully getting a taste of how much fun it can be. You know, what's interesting to me about that is that we started doing this science-based show, and we were not educated as scientists or engineers or anything, but we wanted to do a good job. And so I had learned at that point doing a job is most often best done by being methodical and diligent about your work, working hard and efficiently. And it turns out that that's all science really is just doing a good job of understanding your world. So you break things out, you're methodical about it. We also amazingly learned that, given that we were making a TV show about these things, that we would organize our stories. So we'd set up a premise, and we'd do a body of work that we collected data and so on, and then we would come up with some sort of conclusion at the end of it. Well, doesn't that sound kind of like the scientific method? And it is. And so when we broke out these stories, we found something that we thought would make a good episode, and we organized all of that and laid it out. We had the science to work with, to do that episode. The two are the same sort of thing. So all of this goes to say that, science isn't just for people in lab coats, it's for anybody that wants to understand their world. And we didn't intend to, put it out there that way, but that's why the show was as successful as it was.
Because you didn't intend to?
No, because it tells people at large that, science isn't just for us, it's for everybody. So.
And so now, looking back 5 years on, we have some perspective. Do you think you somewhat succeeded in that mission, or is it still a mission for you?
No, it's not a mission. I didn't set out to save the children.
But maybe you did with some of them.
Yeah. Well, I think we, as I said, we were just trying to do the best we could. We were trying to make a living, and people seemed to like it. And that's, it doesn't have to be any more complicated than that. It is amazing that a show that is a science-based documentary could run for 15 and a half years, and it was it was Discovery's most successful show by a lot of metrics, and they said as much. You would never have thought, so we must have been doing something right, and I think it, in some ways, was more than just us trying to make a buck.
Yeah, and it still lives on in a sense, because I was just talking to someone from the theater, and he said my 17-year-old son loves it, and he's watching it on YouTube, and it's reruns and.
Yeah, well, science and all that kind of stuff is timeless. What it did for me personally, as far as the effect setting aside all the weirdness of being in front of a camera and being a celebrity or that kind of thing, all of those experiments that we did are somewhere in my head, and every minute of those years or that decade or so of doing that provided a tremendous foundation of knowledge that it wasn't academic knowledge. It wasn't just random knowledge. It was a lot of really powerful knowledge, that the kind that comes from pushing things to extremes. It's one thing to look at stuff the way it's supposed to be done, and it's another thing to learn what happens when it's off the hook, which was a lot of our shtick. So that foundation of knowledge, what I think it does, and I'm not, a psychiatrist or psychologist or whatever, is that it has allowed me to make intuitive leaps into areas that I have no direct experience with, and that's a powerful thing, because my brain is making all sorts of connections that maybe you want to call them subconscious, but it's that kind of foundation of experience that is percolating in there, and it's producing results for me in areas that I really shouldn't be able to understand.
And how did you get to that knowledge base? Because, as I said, you had a lot of different jobs before you found something that really you could put your heart into. And how, did you read a lot? Did you watch other shows before you?
No. I think, taking my experience, which was already fairly random and across the board, and basically, as a note for young people at large, I did something maybe a little unusual. I tried a lot of different things, and realizing that I didn't want to be a jack of all trades and master of none, as they say, at a certain point, I said to myself, well, okay, I've done enough of that. Now I should think about, I should basically hack myself and figure out what was going on in there, what I was, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I was good at, what I wasn't, in a very methodical sense, in an organized way. And then, this being in the days before the internet, I went to the library and I researched what that kind of person should do.
The library, for our younger viewers, it's a building with a lot of books in it.
Yes, and I, by the way, had not gotten to that point randomly. I have a degree in Russian for some reason I still haven't figured out. And I was halfway through my, actually I did figure it had something to do with a girl. But anyway, I was halfway through my master's in information science, and I decided to take a break and go to the Caribbean, and the rest was history. But as far as that goes, but I had learned in learning how to gather information, that information is power. And it was something that I could access quite easily and fluidly. So I learned to research myself, and I analyzed that, and I methodically, as I said, decided on what I should do. And for me, special effects was something that was it was creative, and it involved a lot of different materials and processes. It involved working with a lot of different type of people, and it ticked all the boxes of the things that I wanted to do.
But still, this is about the magic minds. So how does it work that you say, okay, I take a break. When I take a break, I go to a coffee corner. You go to the Caribbean and buy a boat and be a dive instructor, and then think, oh, maybe. How does these things connect?
Well, I don't know. I kind of, the other thing, I suppose, and another way of looking at it, different than library science and linguistics and all that kind of stuff, was a lot of these things, you can kind of look at it like surfing, where, you know, the ocean is reality, and you need to pay all due respects to reality because you're not going to win if you fight it. But you can have certain choices on where you go on those waves. And so I did a lot of random, you know, kind of wave riding, and then ended up here.
Yeah. And then there's a method to that.
Yeah, I thought about it a lot, and I was methodical.
To catch that perfect wave.
Yeah.
And how did you think also, then you got offered, I think you were first on Robot Wars, yeah?
Yeah.
That is how your public career started.
Okay, so the thing was that I was managing a shop for a company called Colossal Pictures in San Francisco, and they were the largest film production company at the time there. And so we heard about this thing called Robot Wars, and it started there in the city at a guy I know that used to be a model maker at Industrial Light and Magic, which is a Lucasfilm, Star Wars, etc. And so he had this idea. There was a competition that was held, and I had this idea about my robot, and which turned out to be, well, it was the first really, really destructive robot in the competitions. We would pretty much, it was very simple. We drive out, the opponent explodes, and I leave. You know, except that I terrified the entire event, and they would give me the heavyweight prize, but then ask me to leave because I didn't, you know, I passed all the safety qualifications, so they couldn't kick me out, but they just wanted me to go away. And I had told them what I was building and that I was concerned for the audience. But when, you know, somebody in the audience, I believe it was a woman, caught a nut or a bolt or something in her lap from one of the, you know, the fights, they were concerned as well at that time. And then the next time around, they had raised the walls of the arena to deal with my robot named Blendo. And this time, everybody was afraid of Blendo, and in particular the other competitors. And so they were frenziedly gluing extra armor onto the surface of their robots so they had at least a chance of surviving. And I think it was on the first round, I grabbed a chunk off of one of those, a piece of that additional armor, and it hurled directly at the judge's box, which they said it sounded like a bomb going off right in front of them. So there I go again, heavyweight prize, go away.
But before you, because the thing that's so amazing about how you approach that you somehow, everyone think, oh, I'm going to build a nice robot, and it has to be a little stick and a kick, and you just think, how can I destruct it? Really? Okay, the goal is to destruct the other one. I'm going to make the most destructive thing I can imagine.
Well, since, I mean, this would be something that would, explanation of this would be something I think I can get away with here, because you understand that there's, how many like nerds are in the audience? Yeah, there's, okay, you know, like that's a significant amount. Basically, I sort of had this fantasy about, when I thought about the competition, I was going to get about a 1.5 meter diameter disc of steel and spin it up so fast that I wouldn't have to have a motor on it. I could put little blades or something on it and send it out there, use the flywheel, as it were, as the power source, And if I got that thing going, let's say 20,000 RPM, it'd take a long time to spin down, right?
Right.
So I wouldn't have to have a motor, and it'd all be very simple. Somehow I would have a power takeoff off the flywheel, and I could, radio control that. Well, I started to look into that, and I was like, what's 20,000 RPM on like 1.5 meter diameter? It turns out the tips of blades on that would be going something like Mach 5. And so I called up a physicist friend of mine and asked him what that meant, and he said, well, the edges of that would probably go off like a flash bulb because of the heat. It actually would most likely fly apart because the steel wouldn't be strong enough. You'd have to use some sort of a carbon fiber composite or something to be able to withstand that. And and also in terms of, you can imagine the power required to release that kind of energy or have that, to push through that kind of friction, rather. And so it was unpractical. I decided not to take that approach. But upon further research, I realized that, well, 500 RPM sounds much more reasonable. And then again, surprise, surprise, we had about a 150-pound disc, that was the final robot, that was spinning at 500 RPM. That amount of mass spinning at that speed is not far off from equivalent of a chunk of steel the size of my fist going the speed of sound when it hit. That's a pretty big whack, so I figured it was enough. And it was.
Okay, that sounds like enough. We could talk about this for more hours, I think, once I get you going on this. But I also, not only myself, want to be asking the questions, but also our lovely audience. Also, the people at home, they can join in by the hashtag #TechnologyOnStage. So please ask your questions on Twitter or below on YouTube or even Instagram, and we'll come and find you. And for our audience here, we got this special device. Yeah, well, compared to your robot, what is not that special. And I'd like to first start with readers of the Tubantia could, in the past week, ask their questions. We got lots of questions from them, and 3 of them are here. Where are you guys? There you go. So it's not too far I have to throw. Can I first? Who is Wouter? Yes. Okay. There you go.
Okay. My question is for you. In this online world, basically, how can we improve science and engineering education by means of online videos or exercises? How do you think we can improve this online education in universities? That's basically my question.
Excellent, thank you.
I would think that, and I can answer that in general because it's an ongoing theme of that I have of some of these innovations and things that we can do are not the province of experts, or not necessarily like. Those kinds of questions are best answered by yourself. Like, what would you think would help you learn more or make that material more effective? I think personally there's a wealth of information, as we know, out there that is readily accessible. I suppose it would be good to be able to filter some of it because a lot of it, or so much of it actually, is garbage. I'm talking about, you're just as good at doing this as I would be. There's some of the things that I've been developing in tandem with universities that we're intentionally leaving those to the province of the students because.
What are some of the best solutions then you get from those students?
Well, things like human-machine interfaces things like, we've got, as an example, stuff like Zoom and whatnot, that, and I've been actively working on ways of enhancing remote communication because, this probably bears talking about a little bit. We all generally agree that in-person communications are superior to what you get from a remote one. But that begs the question, well, isn't there anything that a robot or some kind of electronic media can do that humans can't? And so we're actively seeking that, and we're putting those kinds of things in front of people that are the actual users, like this young man right here.
How would that work with a robot?
Well, that's up to them. It's like, what do you respond to? We can study it and do that for those people, but I would be largely consulting with them because they're the ones that are using it, and they'll tell us what they like or don't. I can come up with suggestions, and I have, and...
Please give Wouter one suggestion, otherwise we're just saying to him, find your own solution. Let's give him one suggestion for what you think is a great solution for this.
A great solution for improving education,
right.
and so on. And I would say, let's see, something that would allow you to connect more efficiently the things that you learn or that you're finding interesting with other things that are appropriate without all of the commercialization of the search results.
Well, thank you. Is that sufficient for you, Wouter?
Yes.
And keep in mind, if you get the mic, you're going to get a close-up. So I told you to do your hair. This is really relevant. Now to your next neighbor.
First of all, a small apology. The person who was supposed to be here couldn't be here.
And we realized it a bit too late that
yes.
we had to ask a question. So he.
However, I do.
But you're doing it together.
Yeah.
You make a lovely couple.
We're not a couple.
But who are you and what's your relation to the...
She's a friend of my girlfriend.
She's a friend of your girlfriend?
Yes.
Sure. And you're...
Tell us more.
Okay, cut the cameras, and your girlfriend couldn't be here?
Yes.
Okay. And she sent you?
It's actually more complicated, but let's get to the question.
Okay. Do you also do relationship advice?
I'm an excellent, counselor when it comes to relationships. Yes.
Okay, so any question will be all right. There you go, mate.
We briefly talked about communication, science communication, just now. But it seems to me like there's a bigger problem in society at the moment, which is that not only do we have to communicate good science, we also have to combat miscommunication. And sadly, pseudoscientists have the same tools available to them that scientists and engineers have. So one, in your opinion, could be a good way to combat misinformation, particularly, of course, I don't have to talk about the pandemic and how much harm misinformation is doing. What would be your suggestion?
Get rid of social media. I say that I'm perfectly cognizant of the benefits of social media in some ways. I would love to see it be more actual social media and, keep the politics and the violence and those other things out of it. It's a slippery slope, as we know. It's easier said than done. But from what I've observed, there's, rise of nationalism, the, anti-vax stuff, and all this kind of stuff as a result of a feedback loop that the algorithms and Facebook and others are actively, enhancing. So, I think something should be done to redirect that kind of thing or whatever. These are powerful tools, and some powerful tools can do damage if so you need to wear safety glasses.
Yeah, or get rid of it entirely. Not tonight, because you can join the conversation on hashtag technology on state or hashtag Thierry is vaccinated. Please, thank you so much, Ronnie. And then we go to, yeah, I've got here Stephanie Brink. And maybe we can get a close-up of Stephanie as well. Let me guess, you're the girlfriend of a brother of... Okay, who are you, mate? Tell us.
My question was, what was the most craziest experiment you ever did and made no absolute sense in your lifetime?
Oh, that's one of those superlatives again.
Yeah, I know.
Say that again, I got sidetracked there.
Yeah, what was the most craziest experiment you ever did, but made absolutely no sense at all?
Oh, well, that would be most of the explosions. You know, I mean, that was the explosions. I apologize for those. You know, they're very popular, but you know, Discovery at one point had dictated when they saw that the audience loved them that we have one in every episode, and
yeah, but you got to be honest. I watched a lot of those explosions, and you were sometimes jumping up and down from excitement.
Okay, I'll tell you. You know, there's one that plays on the titles all the time, and I'm wearing a white shirt, and it was on the cement truck. They put this in the titles and stuff like that. And I'm going, oh, you know, that actually the explosion. That was the first big explosion that we did, and we were like, you know, a couple of kilometers away from it. And it took so long for the sound to actually hit us. Once, you know, we saw the poof off in the distance, and then we're waiting and you know, we're looking at each other, and the camera guy is like, you know, he's got the camera pointed down, and then boom. And you know, I did kind of flinch a little bit, but they didn't get it on camera. So the one thing that they show over and over again is me faking it. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you were just watching really scientifically, and then you have to make it bigger for the camera.
Yeah. So explosions, you know, they're for us. They're not that interesting because it's sort of like first the thing was there and then it's not. And you know, you only get to really look at the good stuff in the high-speed camera when you play it back afterwards. And we found some interesting things there, but largely that was a gratuitous effect that was just a crowd pleaser, so they made us do it until we were sick of it.
and then you were, but now you never do an explosion because you're still working on a lot of experiments and building stuff. You never do explosions anymore, just for fun.
I wouldn't say, I wouldn't particularly care to do it for fun. There are times that I need to get something done that requires a lot of energy, and if I happen to have some explosives, I'd probably do it that way. But you know, I don't really, they're not that interesting. I like to, I prefer to create things, not to destroy them, oddly enough.
That's a beautiful point to go to our last question before we get our next guest on stage.
And I want to just add one thing.
At the mic. Cheers.
And that was, you know, you had asked about the way that I got into Mythbusters and everything, and I started talking about the robot. I didn't explain what that meant, so I'm going to go into that really quickly, because you were like, how did you get here, all that kind of stuff, and what did that have to do with it? Well, because I was so notorious, and this thing about spinning up the disk and everything, both literally and figuratively created a spin on the topic, because this notoriety was that much more powerful because we kept getting kicked out. You know, we never followed through and, you know, legitimately completed a competition. They kept kicking us out, but it was actually the best thing that they could possibly do as far as, you know, turning me into a badass, right? And so that caught the attention of a documentary filmmaker from Australia who, he interviewed me, and some years later he would have the idea to do this show about urban legends, and that's how all this, that's, why I'm here, essentially.
Yeah.
So-
I looked at some clips from back then, and do you think your emblematic look also had something to do with it?
I'm sorry, I couldn't understand that.
You looked the same. I saw a clip from 1997.
Okay.
You had the same look, so you kept till this day. You're like the bit of the B.A. Baracus of science.
Oh.
Do you recognize that?
No.
Okay, it's time to get one more question from the audience. Who got a question for Jamie? I'm going in that direction, and Lieke, if you want to catch it for later, because it's a nice way off. Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
Nice catch, mate. What's your name and what's your question?
Hi, my name is Jona, and my question is, do you have some advice for students that are just starting out with their secondary education? I'm a mechanical engineer myself. I'm in my first year. Do you have some advice for me and for others like me?
It's not that of a broad question, so...
Don't eat so much candy. I don't know. I have general principles as far as based on what I personally have done, which I highly encourage having a broad base of knowledge. So try diverse things. I even recommend, and this is something, believe it or not, I make a point of reading things that I'm not interested in. And that is because if I'm interested in them, I probably already know a fair bit about them, and they're, it's like, it's almost like I have this thing also with people that I work with. A lot of people want to work with people that they like and that they, have similar interests to, because they'll get along easier with them. I'm like, if I find somebody that's just like me, I'm like, why do I need you, right? And so I like to have a diverse source of inputs in those things, and the same with what I study or look at. Because I find it lends perspective towards, it keeps you balanced as far as what you're doing. You don't go down a rabbit hole into one specific area, as they say, or some science fiction author, I forget which one it was, is like specialization is for insects. And I'm very much an advocate of that. At a certain point, like I described in my own trajectory, and not that I'm the, I'm the end-all be-all or the example of what, God help us if we were all like me, but, what was I saying? Yeah, what a horrible thought.
Don't eat candy and don't be like an insect.
Yeah, if you have this diversity of knowledge, it applies. It allows you to apply leverage to other things, and at a certain point, after you have that base foundation, then you can specialize and penetrate more deeply into a subject of your choice. But you've got orientation, and this is nothing new. Many schools take this approach or recommend this approach. They want you to take other languages and learn a variety of things before you go into your master's degree or whatever. So I'm an advocate for that, and I think there's more to it than you might think.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for your question. Yeah, applause for our questionnaire. For our next guest, I'm going to need my card. So bear with me for a second, because he has a lot of, and I just name a few of his amazing titles. He's a friend of Jamie's. We're going to fight on stage. He's a professor of advanced robotics and chair of the Robotics and Mechatronics Lab here at the University of Twente. He's a vice president for research of Eurobotics and even vice president of the biggest robotics association in the world. And this is his list of his achievements and awards is seemingly endless. But if you talk to him, you know his dreams are even bigger. He wants to breathe life to machines. So in a way, he's now trying to mimic what a bird does and make a drone fly like that. He is like a modern-day Da Vinci. He is our very own Stefano Stamigioli. Welcome, welcome. Have a seat, folks, have a seat. Okay. Thanks so much for being here, Stefano, as well. I think you two met like on a similar occasion as this, like a few years ago.
Well, I think we were discussing about 10 years that we know each other personally. Of course, I knew Jamie before that, because I was watching Mythbusters, but about 10 years that we personally know each other. Yeah.
And what sparked the conversation off?
Yeah, well, at a certain point, the university, when it has anniversaries, decided to give honorary degrees to people that have meant something for science, either because of innovation in entrepreneurship of science or divulgation of science. And actually, a colleague of mine, together with a colleague of mine who's here in the audience, Leon Abelman, said, you know, who's better than the Mythbusters? What they did for kids. So that started the ball rolling, and I have a big network, so I managed to get hold of Jamie, basically, and Adam, and we got in contact like that. But the nice thing is that there was immediately a click to actually work on together on something, and that's actually was much more important than the thing we started to talk for.
Yeah, I mean, I've found the relationship with Stefano and Twente as it's been very enriching. We've become good personal friends and connect with each other regularly, and also some of the mechanical engineering, mainly in robotics, it seemed to be, oddly enough, something that I had been gravitating towards throughout this process, regardless of knowing that Stefano was into it. But we've collaborated on, and in fact, on this some of the flapping kinds of bird research that we did. I had worked on an episode that never got made on Mythbusters, where we took a hang glider and made it flap. And so, it had an electric motor on it and everything, and there's some pretty complicated mechanical linkages in there, which I checked with Stefano and his team and they went into it in a great deal of depth and gave me very important feedback about it. I was pleased that most of the approach that I had come up with, they thought highly of and thought it was one of the best ways to do it. So that kind of thing is, we've done a number of things like that, as well as, we're friends.
Yeah. And Stefano, were you surprised about the methodological studies that went into making the show?
Yeah, I mean, that was the nice thing about it, because, I mean, what is science, as Jamie said before, is like you have a question you want to verify, and, it's very disappointing, it was discussed before, that now, after what we learned from big people in science, that now we just like, they kind of forgotten how that is done. So I really liked the show because it was like, there was the question, then you verified, and in a methodological way. And yeah, so that's what I like. And then, what I like working with Jamie is that, of course, it was a superstar for me when I got to know him, but, basically, it doesn't matter how famous you are, when you are doing technology, it's just, that's the goal, the enthusiasm you have for things you make, and that's just the way we have been starting interacting, and we still, you know, with a question, we can email each other, and it's always fun.
And you're still working on the bird?
Yes.
The bird, how do
yes.
you call it?
It's a robotic bird. It's actually a falcon, which was experimentally was gotten to fly by somebody else, and then we improved it to a state which is now is. But then it's not very clear why it actually flies. You know, birds' flight is very complicated. We know more or less certain principles, but the details are not really yet understood. And so I was extremely happy and fortunate to get a huge grant, the European ERC grant, which is a very prestigious European grant of 2.8 million, which built a great team of young guys, and we are trying to decode how things fly, and at the same time also do the engineering. So it's very broad, from very theoretical work to very practical work. And you know, probably we will not finish what I have envisioned, but hopefully I will do it before I die. And I hope to live long enough.
Yeah, we hope that as well. What I find very interesting, and what I also hear in your story, that you have a foundation of knowledge, and you can take a leap from there into something you don't know if you don't have the experience. Yeah. And you talked about it earlier, James, so maybe you can elaborate a little on that. What are the kinds of things that you think, okay, then you doubt yourself, or you say, oh, I don't know anything about it? How does it start?
Well, what I find when I'm in an ideation process is that like a lot of things that you do when you're building or creating things, you start to take little steps. You know, you break it up into smaller pieces, and you analyze those, you organize them, and you start to push on the subject. And I call this, you know, building up something that you can apply leverage to. It's acquiring data and information. It's almost like a forensic investigation, where you're trying to catch the bad guy or something like that, and something bad happened, and you go in and you don't really know what happened. You don't know, and in my case, when you're trying to, you know, invent something or problem solve, you don't really know maybe in the start where you're going or how you're going to get there, but you start to collect all this data, and then you organize it, and you find, aha, the criminal must be over there, and his name is such and such, and you catch the guy. So it's like that with these kinds of investigations, except that this foundation of knowledge is also part of the investigation, because it's in there in your head, whether you're aware of it or not, providing clues or picking up clues, picking up a scent or a hint of a trail. Sometimes, I don't know about Stefano, but when you're on the hunt like that, and I consider this kind of like that, like I'm a hunter, I'm hunting for an answer, and sometimes I pick up a whiff of a scent of the prey, and so.
Can you give an example when that happened, or?
No.
Okay.
It's all fiction. I'm lying. I'm sorry. Yeah, but that's the way I experience it anyway, and I've seen it happen all the time where I'll find my way to a solution because my mind sort of gave me the answer just by getting in there and starting to exert myself, and things sort of fall into place, and you know, so. The more stuff that you have in there as far as the foundation, and that means, that's like what I was talking to the young man over there, that, you know, get a diverse, you know, amount of information, different types of information, or skills, experience, and so on, so that your brain can do that for you. I mean, we've all bandied about, you know, the subconscious, and it's, you know, mumbo jumbo, who knows what's there, and I'm just explaining it as I see it, not being, you know, really qualified to analyze what's going on, like somebody that studies brains or psychology or whatever, but that's what I find, and it works.
How does it work with you? Are you also a little Ms. Marple, who goes on a hunt?
Well, I think that my opinion, there are three major ingredients for innovation and technology, which is enthusiasm and creativity and critical attitude. And I think, I say this because, you want to be curious first to say, I want to build something. Curiosity is very important. And then you need the energy to invest because, like Jamie, if you build something, it locks the door until it's finished. And my kids that are here in the audience, they know that when I'm on a problem, I'm like in my own world. And so that's the enthusiasm. And I think the critical attitude, which is missing a lot nowadays, is really, to find a way to see that what you're doing is the right thing, to be very critical, to look around and read whatever you do. What I don't, personally myself, I see some other colleagues that, they work on a certain field, they have a certain chair in a certain field, they work like this, and, if they see something you're interested in, well, it's not part of what I do, so I don't look at it. Instead, I think it's part of being creative to the minimal things that you see which trigger you to invest time into it. And then you make connections. I think that the biggest nice things are when you actually are using something that is not part of your field.
Yeah, would it then even be easier to have that critical mind because you're not?
Well, it's education, right? It's the important things. For example, at university, hearing some question from the student, I think that I always start saying to the student. I think it's in 1600 the first scientific society in England was started, and I think it's in nullius in verba. So you should never trust what people say. So when I start lecture very often, I say, "Don't trust me." Trigger me to convince you that what I'm saying is right, with arguments. You shouldn't trust a professor because he's a professor. You shouldn't trust a Nobel Prize because he has a Nobel Prize. Okay, and I think that is missing completely in society, and now very unfortunately also in education. And I think that this is the core of progress.
Well, thank you. There's also, again, we have to we could talk about this for a lot more, but I'd love to hear some more questions from the audience. So where is our toss around mic? Is there someone on the balcony with a question? Please say yes, because I really want to try to toss the mic over there. Someone has a question on top. Yeah, I see one right in the middle. And one in the front. I'm going to try. Brace yourself down there. Oh, no. Can we get it up through the sides? There you go. Oh! One more try, and then to try to get to the guy there. People watching at home, and they don't see this on their screen. We're trying to get a question, and now it's just tossed aside. Okay. Lieke, go fetch the mic and try to get it on the first balcony. There, toss it over there. And people pass on. There you go. Until all the way through that guy. Yes, applause. Thank you very much. Lieke, everyone. Okay, this better be a really good question. Because we waited long for it. Yeah, he's there. All right, mate. Thank you. What's your name? What's your question?
My name is Daniel. And I have one question.
Oh, good. Because we have only room for one.
So my question is, what is one piece of belief you have that you think sharing with the rest of the world will more or less change a lot of people's opinions and maybe the way they think?
Wow, that is a great question. Thank you so much for getting it all the way up there. Who for you?
You go first.
No, you go first. I don't think there's, for some of the, with the complexity of the world that we have, I don't think there's a single answer or a question or anything that you could ask that would solve that or provide a solution. Unfortunately, it's the curse of our world that everything is there's almost never one answer to almost everything. So I don't know how to answer that. There's some incremental things that we can do to take us places, depending on where we want to go. But that's about the best that I can do. And also, I have to say, like, I'm some guy on TV, so what do I know? I mean, I have a foundation of knowledge. I have as a result of sort of intuition about, making some things, and I have strong opinions about, the way the world should be, or things that we should do or should not do. But I object to people listening to celebrities like myself as if I had some special insights on the way the world works. I don't. So.
Yeah, thank you so much.
So we should not listen to celebrities.
Yeah, that's the gist of it. It's like
again, hashtag Jerry is vaccinated. Stefano, what do you think on this?
It's a very difficult question. I was thinking meanwhile, I believe in passion for things. I believe I think that a single person can be contagious with others and can change a lot of things. So I think that we need leaders with passion that have good reasons to do things. So I believe in the power of humans to do things. And unfortunately, it's a bit depressing nowadays to look around, but that's what I think is what I believe in. I was educated, in the Catholic and things like this. The only thing I believe is in good people and passion that they may have to change things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes. Thank you for your question. Who in the room has a question and you can toss it to that person? Yeah, just take aim of everyone holding the hand up. Oh, now it stays on the balcony, of course. This is the last question on the balcony, then it comes down again. Okay, mate, what's your question?
Hi, thank you, first of all, for coming all the way to Twente.
Well, you're welcome.
For me, it was not a long way, by the way.
And thank you, Stefano, for coming all the way to the city center. My question to you is, what is your drive? Why do you do what you do?
Curiosity. It's for me, these things, when I build things or I try and solve a problem, it's the best I can describe it is it's an adventure. Some people climb a mountain or something, go rough water riding in rapids, and for me, an adventure is to have an idea and that I may or may not be able to pull off. I mean, when I take on projects and things that I'm doing now, I don't try to do blue sky things that I know are impossible. There's there are things that you can learn by trying to do that, but I try to find things that are I think there's some question whether I can actually pull them off or not. And so then when I actually, in the occasions that I do achieve my goal in those cases, it's that much more meaningful and exciting to me. I think these adventures in whether it's engineering or the sciences, Stefano mentioned passion for the work and or the investigation. Whether you treat it like, you're hunting wild game, or you treat it like an organized effort at methodically working your way through some math problem or chemistry or something like that. It's challenging yourself to things that excite you, that you're passionate about, and that you're motivated, therefore, to reach beyond, or put in extraordinary effort to solve that problem or reach that goal. That's what drives me.
Yeah.
For you?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're on the same wave in that respect. I think that also, you know, the thirst of understanding things and understanding what the world around you. And it gives so much pleasure to work with people in a team and to solve a problem and to get to do what James was just saying is the whole process. You know, sometimes you fail, sometimes when you get it there, and also the way to it is very stimulating because it creates a kind of chemistry in the process of doing that, which is very satisfying. So you can, you know, nerds like us, they work on things, and then, you know, sometimes it's hard and tiring, but if you get something done, it's heaven, so to speak. You know, that's the process that gets to there.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. Lieke, can you get hold of the mic to see if there are any questions from the hashtag Technology on Stage? Lieke is over there. Can you toss it all the way there? Are you all right? Yeah, nobody's hit. Okay. Lieke, any questions from the Twitter or YouTube?
Yes. We have one question from Max. What do you hope will be achieved within 5 years in a technological field?
Okay, thank you. Max, at home. What do you hope to be achieved the coming 5 years?
5 years out, there's a lot of, I would say that there are a lot of energy-related and ecology-related things, like we need to worry about, what is it, 1.5C, and I think there ought to be some movement that is pretty strong by then in that direction. There's so much effort that is being put into different alternative energy sources, and with solar and all these kinds of things, and integrating them. A lot of that's to do with the global warming, but it also has to do with I think these things, the way that we're seeing them now, kind of ganging up on us, feeling like we've screwed the planet and we need to do something about it from a lot of different angles. I see so much of a sea change in the way people are looking at this, rather than just something that's distant. There's a certain sense of urgency about it, and I think we ought to start to see movement in that direction within that period of time. We already are seeing it, but we ought to see something that is very tangible by that point.
Well, hopefully for you, Stefano. What do you think?
That's the same. I think I have kids. I think in my life time frame, I will it will not be a disaster. I'm seriously worried for my kids and their kids and whatever, because the environment is nature is far bigger than the ego of Trump, and I can say that that and other idiots that have the power in our world, and that's my biggest worry. So technology can change, but you need also the political support in order to make these movements. Yeah, we are on the same wave. Again, that's my biggest concern for the coming 5 years.
And I have something I want to say, even and again with the caveat that just because I said it and I'm or used to be a celebrity, I shouldn't be. I don't have any more weight to apply towards this than anybody else, but. On not a political, no sort of implications whatsoever about the kinds of turmoil that we're seeing today, and the squabbles that are going along amongst individuals. But in answer to the question up there about something that would change mechanically and practically speaking. We're at a point where we can't afford to have all this fractionalizing of the way the world works. There needs to be something like all these countries doing their own thing, and if I want to pollute and let it drift over the neighboring country, I have the right to do that. No, you don't. And we have the UN, which doesn't seem to be able to, do anything that way. They have some function, but I think we have to have some sort of centralized ability to coordinate what the world does. It's just, forget politics, it just makes common sense. We're not communicating, we're not coordinating, we're just like trashing the place like a bunch of, gangs. And I don't think it should be like that. I don't know the answer, I don't know how to do it, but on a totally just like, it's common sense, right? At least, so there's my answer up there. That's the best I can do.
Yeah. So, thank you, Max, and the people in the audience. And it's already time to invite our third guest on the stage. And this is another magic mind who is more of an entrepreneur. He started his business around here, just a simple dorm room in Enschede. And 30 years on, it's an enormous company with over 800 people. And I think over a dozen places around the world where they do their amazing work. And although the skill has changed so much dramatically, they still do the same. They start innovation with imagination. I'm talking about the company of Demcom. Ladies and people, Peter Rutgers. Yeah, keep on clapping, people. You're not here yet. Peter Rutgers. Nice. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Have a seat. And what I love about Peter is he comes from a different point of view than the other people, but he's still also, although he's leading like a big company, he's still right in the middle of things, working on those projects, and I believe like a Superman floating in around the world if something really needs a really big fix.
Yes.
Yeah, and as you can hear, Peter is very modest, but that's what I got on my card, so it's true. Tell us, when we talked earlier, you said this, and this may be what you share with the other gents here on stage, that you were interested in technology from a very early age.
No.
You built your own first steam engine, I think, when you were 12?
Yeah, indeed. I grew up between a lot of machines. My father traded machines, and I was building my first steam engine out of just rough pieces of steel when I was, I think, about 12 or so, using turning lathes and milling machines, that kind of thing.
And so it was in the stars. And Stefan, I think you have a similar story. What was the first
Yes,
thing you built?
I remember, I think I was around, before 10 for sure, 7, 8, I don't remember. And I discovered that the tape recorder, for those in the audience, tapes were some things that you put and you could listen to music and stuff.
Yeah, you could get them at a library.
Yes, a library maybe. And I discovered, that if you take out the battery, they basically stop playing. So my brother came back from training in the evening. What I did, I just took 2 wires, very simple, and I did the connection to the door. And then I put the volume at maximum with very hard music, and then I was waiting, so when I arrived, very tired, he opened the door, this music started, screaming. I said, this is cool, like, I want to do more of this.
Yeah. Jamie, when did it start with you? Was it also this early?
No.
Okay, well,
I did show a certain aptitude for physics. I discovered, we had a fairly large lawn, and it was my job to mow the lawn when I was a teenager. And I discovered that if I could find a tree and it was a riding lawnmower, and I could drive the lawnmower into the tree repeatedly, that eventually I would break something, and my father would come fix it while I was, sitting under a tree someplace else having a cool drink. I had a whole menu of those things. If there was a wet spot in the yard, I could use the same sort of, back and forth with the mower in the wet spot, and eventually the mower would no longer be able to move. And and there I am sitting under the tree with a cool drink again. I even got sophisticated enough to take the spark plug cap off of the spark plug, and I could withdraw the wire just a little bit so that it no longer connected with the thing that touched the spark plug. And it took him a good while.
Well, this is also an early challenge. And, Peter, when we talked earlier, I love it when you said, and it really reflects on what we spoke earlier. I've asked you what inspires you the most, and then you said things I know nothing about, because then I can learn.
Indeed, people come to DEMCON mostly with very new problems, and it's especially nice if it's new and there's no example of it in the world, and you really have to think of something new yourself. And of course, then you also learn the most, but it's also very challenging. And I think.
Can you name a recent example of such a project?
I can give an example. For instance, we have a quite big project at the moment where we are going to produce molybdenum-99, that's a medical isotope, without using a nuclear reactor. Normally it is produced using a nuclear reactor to produce slow neutrons to fission uranium-235. And we are going to do that by bombarding a piece of molybdenum-100 and then via a photonuclear reaction remove a neutron. And one of the difficult things is that it is only a useful end product if we have a very, very high power density in the block of molybdenum of about 300 kilowatts per cubic centimeter continuously. And so the main challenge is to keep that thing intact and get about the volume of a matchbox, get 2 megawatts out continuously. Well, there's nothing even comes close to that except things that Jamie makes that explode. but this should not explode, and so that's really a challenge. And there's nowhere you can look at how you should do something like that. Well, that's the kind of thing that we really like to solve.
It's the little things.
And another thing also, because I was curious, because I don't know how many people are working with you on your current project. For instance, you got the tank. I'm looking at you, sorry, it's my glasses. But you are now developing several new projects, like a tank who's remote controlled.
Well, I actually built those and delivered it. Or delivered them. There was I acquired a piece of Army surplus equipment that was vintage 1960s, and that was a variant on an armored personnel carrier. It's basically a tank, except not with the big gun that swings around or anything like that. This particular variant was designed to carry cargo into the battlefield with the tanks. So I turned that into a remote-controlled firefighting vehicle that was capable of actually going into a fire and staying there for a while. And without going too much into the details of it, I used the 1,000-gallon water tank that I put in the, liters, you know.
A lot of water.
I
we
know.
Get it.
Yeah, I should use liters, but anyway, I buy, in the US, we buy things, everything's gallons, so sue me. But anyway, so big tank of water in the back. I use that as a heat sink for the heat that comes in. We do have a proximity suit material on the exterior that reflects about 95% of the radiant heat that would hit it from a fire, but anything that gets past that will get dumped into the water tank and heat through a heat exchange. And we have basically it's a big robot with a rainstorm inside that is spraying all over everything. Everything's waterproof, but it absorbs heat from that and pumps that through a heat exchanger inside the water tanks and that cools it. And why that's important, not just to keep the whole thing from melting down, but if you have a diesel that's inhaling, you know, very hot air, which tends to go along with fire, then the diesel isn't going to run very long. So this rainstorm acts as a sort of industrial scrubber to clean and cool the air before it reaches the air intake in the diesel. And there's a whole range of things like that, and we know that...
And what I was curious about, because you're working with about 800 people, I think you get 50 or so in your lab?
I think our group is about 60 people.
60? And do you come up with it by yourself, or do you need the common knowledge base to work with that?
Well, it's one of the joys of having to, you know, I stuck it out on Mythbusters as long as I could, and then when I couldn't stand it any longer, and they were starting to, you know, make us repeat stuff over and over again, which is what Hollywood tends to do with everything. You know, I figured it was time to go, and now I get to do what I want. I don't have to do things that other people want me to do. Because I worked hard and I saved, and you know, I'm 65, so I'm entitled to do that kind of thing. But and so it's just me, and I hire subcontractors where I need them. I have a general policy for my business that if there's somebody that knows how to do a thing, then they should do it. I don't need to reinvent the wheel. They'll be in bidding a job. You know, they'll be taking some of the profit that I wouldn't get, but then I would probably be more expensive to do their work because I would have to, you know, start from ground zero to learn what they do. So why bother? Where the area that I live in and thrive in is when there is no such person that already does that. And like Peter, it's like what excites me is when there's something that I don't know, and then I swing into motion and I figure it out. And so in this case, that whole thing, I had some welding people and fabricators like that, but the design was mine. I had a tailor that was one of the tailors from, you know, Star Wars and things like that came in and worked with the unusual proximity suit material. I call them fire jammies. You can see if you want to look online, you can find 2017 the firefighting tank, Jamie Heineman, something like that. You'll find there's a cover article.
We put a link on the website.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it's a fun read, and it describes the whole thing. And so, you know, I dealt with, I did most of the designing. I did a bunch of the machining and things like that in my shop. There were half a dozen other contractors. The coding and the electronics, not my strong suit so much. I'm competent in some areas of that, but I hired people to work at my company in San Francisco to do a lot of that. The other thing that I did was a counter drone, which is a drone that is designed to take down hobby drones that are doing bad things. You know,
could come really handy. Yeah,
well, you know, those hobby drones can carry things like grenades, and that's bad in populated areas. So, especially if you get a swarm of them. Yeah. So, and if you get a swarm of them, flying over a football field or something, that's a really bad thing.
Again, this is a movie, right?
I'm sorry?
This is the next movie, I think, in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Hopefully.
Yeah, sounds exciting.
It's not more.
Well, it gets better. So, given that I designed this thing to be able to defend, you know, populated areas like, you know, a football stadium or something, where you don't want to, you know, have people die, because you're shooting at the target drone, right? I decided to put a fully automatic belt-fed machine gun on it, but oddly enough, the trick is in the ammo, which are tiny bolas. They're They're Kevlar kite string that are about this long. They have a pellet on either end. It's what gauchos use to snag cattle or, you know, prey. You swing it around and the balls go whipping around, tie their legs up, and they fall over, that kind of stuff. And so we shoot those over top of the drone, and they get sucked down into the prop. And what happens is that it messes with the very sensitive flight controls that have been designed to keep cameras running, you know, stably, which is, you know, what the drones were initially mainly for. And they, it affects the yaw control, so it starts to spin, and other props increase their speed to try and counteract that. That sends it up. The one prop that's been hit is compromised, so it flips. And it's 100% effective. We can take
but then I'm going to speed you up a little because of the time.
Oh, okay.
It drops down and explodes within all those people.
Well, you know.
Okay, yeah, well, it's still something to be worked on. I'd like to go on because we have a final segment. While we got these great minds on stage, I thought, why don't we, in the last 5 minutes, fix some of the world problems? So this is the segment we call Magic Minds Fix the World. It's quite a long intro, but we'll cut it short because of the time. Yeah, we talked about, early on, we talked about the fake news, global warming, but what another, last Friday, I don't know if you know this, but it was World Toilet Day. And this is a serious problem because 3 billion people in the world don't have a toilet they can use, which has a lot of effect on the diseases and clean drink water. Okay, discuss.
Well, I've always said that you know, plumbing is one of the most important things. It's something that we all need, and some people don't have, and yet it's odd that it's not like if you, for example, were a child and asked them what they want to be when they grow up, your like is not going to get, I want to be a plumber, you know, and yet it's fundamental. So I think that plumbing ought to be more respected, and as far as people that don't have it, there are ways of bringing it to them. It's not the fault of the plumbing technology that we have, certainly. It's going to be the fault of the, you know, infrastructure that can provide it to them, or the, you know, the countries or places that are extremely poor and don't have the resources to deal with it.
Peter or Stefano, you're flown in, you can fly around the world. How would you fix it technologically?
Well, it's a bit a difficult question, I think, for me, but I think one important thing is to have enough fresh water to flush the toilets, or maybe not fresh, but water is becoming more and more scarce, so you will also need some solution for that.
Okay, well, that's an easier problem to start with.
Stefano, you were saying? To look at the system of, not the system of the toilet, but the system as a whole. So I think that, you know, in those countries you should have, I mean, education is the answer to 99.9% of the problems. To create a program in which you teach what are the sanity things that you need to do, you teach how to do the plumbing, and I mean, there are solutions. The technology of our toilet is reasonably simple, you know. So I think it's more like, you know, people should know what should be done, what is good and what is bad, and that is about education.
Okay.
And money. So you should, you know, should start people that go there, that teach the people how to do it, and the technology by itself is very simple. So.
The technology is very simple. We just need the money. See, that's the kind of solutions I need for this night. Everybody go upbeat to their homes.
No program. I'm not saying money. You know, money is part of the problem, part of the solution. but it's not the solution.
Okay, let's do one more. Let's have a bumper for fun's sake. There you go. One more challenge. Jamie, I don't know if you know this, but in Holland we got a little something called COVID-19. It's been quite a hassle lately. Is there any technical solution? Please give us something.
We are currently working on multiple projects for cryo-EM. So that's cryogenic electron microscopy. And if you can prepare samples very well, which is something that we are working on, then you can very effectively measure the molecular structure of, for instance, viruses. And if you know exactly the molecular structure of a virus, you can much easier design a vaccine for that. And one of the projects we have is just finished a bit too late because the vaccine is already there, but if we would have finished it
earlier, we're probably going to need it at some point.
Yeah, definitely. So, so that is something that will help enormously in the speed of development of new vaccines.
Great.
I'm provocative. We have a solution, you know. I mean, if you look in Portugal, 98% of the people are vaccinated, the problem is solved. So the solution is there, there is the data, the statistics. We have the solution called vaccine. Half of the population is here thanks to those. And now we're not using it. That's the problem. So we have a solution. I think that COVID is not a problem. It's something that happened because hygienic reason. We know the story and the source of the problem. And we are here and still here because we have a solution and people don't use it. And they don't believe in science because science has a solution.
Thank you. Anything to add?
I agree 100%. But you know, that very thing that Stefano was pointing out is, again, what I addressed before: feedback loops in social media that amplify these, you know, rumors that makes them travel like a virus, and so all of a sudden you have some ridiculous thing that, you know, somebody that will go to get a flu shot and happily do that, and they've been doing it for forever, but they won't take a COVID shot. That's one answer. There are also, I mean, one of the projects that I've been working on over the pretty much the entire span of COVID is personal protective gear that uses UV light, so you know, and LEDs basically that you can wear that will sterilize the air that is coming in. And there's one thing actually that, you know, it's not a solution to it, but it also amazes me that it hasn't been you know, instituted more. I don't know about how much it is in this country, but in the US there are a lot of these restaurants and things that have to, you know, you can't bring somebody inside to feed them, and you put a shelter outside on the sidewalk or something like that, and somehow that's okay. The thing that I've been aware of from studying this thing in tandem with the Indiana University School of Public Health is that air movement is a super easy thing to do. Like venues like this, you know, how hard would it be to get things circulating a little bit? Because it makes a tremendous difference. Ventilation, I mean, in my shop, I instituted a thing. I cracked the roll-up door a little bit in the front. There's an exhaust fan in the back. I've demonstrated on camera holding a stick of incense in the middle of it. I've mapped it out. Air comes in, it goes like this towards the end of the shop and out. And that's what the virus does. In a lot of these public gathering situations, it's dead simple and nobody's doing it.
Okay, so that's hopeful. There are solutions, and hopefully we'll use them all. Before I'm really looking at the time and we really have to wrap up. But before we do that, one more thing. This was a cue. One more thing. this was a cue for something completely different, but then I'll just go and explain it myself. There's a really cool video to kick off the Dutch Innovation Days in 2022. There are going to be another 5 days here in Enschede with lots of talks like this, workshops, exhibitions about how we can manage those bigger and smaller problems that we're facing nowadays using technologies and these amazing minds. The theme is Magic Minds Fix the World. This was just a little taste of it. Mark your calendars for the 20th of April till the 24th, and we'll hopefully see you there. Now, before we gonna wrap up this nice proceedings, please an announcement from the theater. You came in really nicely, just one by one. Please exit the theater the same way. Give each other some room, give some space. Don't hustle too much. And maybe you can even watch the movie while you're walking out. We'll see to that. Thank you very much, all of you here and all of you at home, for participating, your great questions, for making this a great night. I think I'm speaking for all of us here. And can I get a lovely, nice Wilming Theater applause for Peter Rutgers, Stefano Stamigioli, and Jamie Heineman. Thank you so much. Peter Rutgers, Stefano Stamigioli, and Jamie Heineman are Magic Minds for tonight. Please stay safe, stay curious, and see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Join the Magic Minds, the game changers, impact makers, the minds who change the rules, those who create magic moments, fascinating companies, mind-blowing innovations. Meet the ones who do not just mind their own business. Connect with the minds who have the skills, ideas, and drive to fix the world. Dutch Innovation Days.